This summer, obviously, Kings fans, once again, you know the drill, checking daily, X to find out what's going on. If you're not following this guy, you should be. You probably are. Senior NBA insider, host of the HoopsHype podcast, Michael Scotto with us. Michael, thanks for your time. Can we just start by asking you what you think a Demar Derozan market might be like this summer for the Kings?
What's going on, fellas?
Hey.
Happy to be on with you. As far as the fastball right away on Demar Derozan, I mean, guy's about to turn 36, proven scorer, but not a floor spacer. And when you're looking at the books, coming up almost $25 million for this upcoming season, about 25.7 the following year, I think it's a contract that in theory could be moved, but as far as whether there's his value, I think it's, mostly kind of neutral. I don't think it's a bad contract, but it's movable. But I don't know how many teams nowadays are clamoring for guys in their late 30s at this point. And when I look at him, I've been impressed with his ability to maintain his scoring prowess. I mean, this is probably one of the more underrated scorers in the NBA. Honestly, I think in the history of the league. I mean, I know he's been a 6-time All-Star, but just a guy that I feel like has been underappreciated a little bit. Scoring is not the problem for him, that's for sure. I just think more people value floor spacing the way today's NBA is, and that's not necessarily his strong suit. He's more of a mid-range guy and a performer in the clutch down the stretch.
Michael, when you look at the Kings roster, because a lot of Kings fans are expecting some sort of moves from Scott Perry, how would you rate their assets, I guess, from players to picks or whatever? A lot of people are talking about DeMar. You just mentioned it's probably a neutral gain there if you're Sacramento. What about some of the other players? Do we have any desirable people out there on the market, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I would say you look at some of your young guys, like Keegan Murray has positive value on the market. A lot of teams like him, his ability to shoot and defend, to play the 3 or the 4 spot on the floor, which makes him versatile and coveted by teams. I would also say Devin Carter was a guy that people liked in the draft. When last season, when you guys were considering going after Cam Johnson on the Brooklyn Nets, there was a possibility that, Brooklyn would have looked at Devin Carter as a guy to put in that package, but Sacramento didn't want to part with him. So Devin Carter's a guy I look at that has value. Up top, you know what you're getting out of Domantas Sabonis. You know that he's going to be a guy that is under contract for the next few years. He's certainly a fringe all-star. I think if Sacramento had a better record at the time, he had a strong case to make it on his stats alone. Zach LaVine had one of his better bounce-back offensive seasons last year in Chicago. Was able to trade him to you guys. But another guy where I don't think on the market because of his contract and the way that the new CBA is structured is going to be heavily valued. There are pieces here to work with for Sacramento, certainly future picks. Everybody always likes to store in their cupboard. So those do have value as well. There are pieces to move here. I think the question is going to be, what kind of direction do they go? Sacramento, in my opinion, is a little bit in the middle at this point.
Michael Scotto with us from the HoopsHype podcast, a senior NBA insider. To that point, Michael, do you think it's possible the Kings are going to have to wait and see how some things play out in what could be a crazy offseason before they decide which direction they want to pursue?
I mean, I think going into it, certainly they got to decide on the big three with Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan. Are you keeping all those three? Did you feel that Doug Christie in the second half of the season showed you enough where you can make the playoffs? But again, it's like if you're trying to be something better than that, the West is stacked, and it's loaded. We'd be having a different conversation if Sacramento is in the East, but that's not it. So big picture, they added Valanciunas to upgrade in the front court as well, close to the deadline. They got to figure out Jake LaRavia as well, what they're going to do with him. looking ahead. There's other pieces there on the outside. I just think I don't really know what is. They've got a lot of like guys that you can make the case. Oh, this guy could be the number 2 guy on a good team, or maybe a number 3 on a really high level championship team. But I don't respectfully look at those guys and say that is the star player that's going to carry you to a top 4 seed in that conference. And so they've got to figure out if they're going to consolidate that or maybe take a different approach and go a little bit younger to an extent. DeMar is obviously in a win now mode. DeMontis is still, but DeMontis is in his prime, and so is Zach.
Right. Michael Scotto joining us. Michael, obviously, a lot of people are saying it's going to be a wild offseason with trades. We know about the usual suspects, the Durants, the Giannis's, those names being thrown out. Give me some other guys that could be on the move. Could a Ja Morant or a Trae Young or somebody like that be on the move this offseason?
I like where your head's at.
Okay.
I think when you're looking beyond the other two, and you asked me about Ja, and I know Memphis Grizzlies executive Zach Kleiman came out and said, well, everybody wishes today had Ja. We're not moving him, da-da-da. All right. We'll see when the draft comes around and you get towards free agency, because, they're going to try to obviously lock up Jaren Jackson Jr. even further with an extension if they can. But the question there is, has that core peaked? And I don't know if the coaching change is really going to move the needle. It certainly didn't look like that at the end of the year. Trae Young, you mentioned. Certainly Trae Young is going to want as close to the max as possible. If you're Atlanta, you have a lot of young pieces there that can help them grow down the line. But Trae certainly is more of while he's in his prime, he obviously wants to win now. To me, I think there are teams that could benefit from getting a guy like Trae Young. There are certain teams out there that struggle offensively that I think he would really help. But again, with the new CBA, are you willing to pay a guy like that, who at times has been a fringe all-star even though his numbers are there because of team success? Are you going to pay that guy $50 million or so? Going to take a bunch of your cap, and then is that going to be one of those winning players? So those are the type of things that those teams have to look at. I'm briefly perusing through the league and the rest of the league to see if is there another guy that maybe sticks out. I think from a team perspective, they've got a lot of young pieces here, the Houston Rockets. So I don't know which of those young guys would be, but if they're going to make a splash for a big player, whether it's Giannis, Durant, they've got a lot of attractive young pieces who could fit there and be on the move. If you're the Cleveland Cavaliers and you're going into next season over the second apron, it's going to make it tough for them to keep Ty Jerome. It's going to make it tough to keep Sam Merrill. But bigger picture and more towards your question, what do they do with Jarrett Allen? What do they do with Darius Garland?
Yeah.
If one of them move? Because you've got Donovan Mitchell and you've got Evan Mobley, and those are more so the pillars of that organization, especially now that Mobley got Defensive Player of the Year and his salary increased because of that clause in his contract. So lastly, certainly I would look at the Boston Celtics due to the cap situation. Again, they've got to make moves. And the question then becomes, does a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, who struggled to be healthy at the end of the year but helped them win a championship, can they move him given his contract situation? I think it's possible, given where he is in his contract, towards the end here. And then what do they do after that? Do they, they can get plenty of stuff for Derek White. I'm not saying they want to move him, but they could if they want. Drew Holiday could help a team that's looking to win now. Sam Hauser off the bench shooting-wise can help. But given his salary and the luxury tax implications, I would think that he's a player that could be moved given where he is in the depth chart in the pecking order. So all these things are going to be floating in the air. And you kind of said a lot of people are talking about, well, it has the potential to have a lot of movement. I'm in that same frame of mind. I am fired up and excited. I think it's going to be deal or no deal in the NBA this summer for sure.
Michael Scotto, can you tell us what extent, if any, you think Kings should be interested or following RJ Barrett's name this offseason?
Well, RJ Barrett, I mean, before Toronto acquired Brandon Ingram towards the deadline, I reported that they were talking to New Orleans about moving RJ to New Orleans, but they had an excess of wing players, so it wasn't necessarily a fit. The issue with RJ Barrett and the Toronto Raptors is that when you've got Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram and you're essentially building around those guys, they don't necessarily stretch the floor. Neither does RJ Barrett. So you've got to ask yourself, is RJ Barrett a fit where they have Grady Dick, who they drafted, and he's a shooter? So you kind of want him on the floor with Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. Does RJ Barrett fit better as a really good sixth man? Is it worth it to pay him that money? And does he also want to have that role, or does he still view himself as a starter at this point? So when I look around the league, I think for RJ, it's an interesting dynamic. He put up good stats on a team that was in the lottery last year in Toronto. On a championship team or a high caliber playoff team, I'm not sure if I don't think he's getting that same type of role. So I think that's where it's going to be interesting for RJ when you look at his future.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. Not just a good follow, but a necessary follow. If you're an NBA fan, Michael Scotto, HoopsHype. Thanks, Michael. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game.
I appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend, fellas, and the calm before the storm as we get ready for the draft and free agency.
Yes, sir. All right, Michael.